Lagos is a city of contradictions. Towering banks, shadow-rusted rooftops, expensive cars swerve around barefoot children, and under the boiling sun, where chaos and ambition collide, some stories quietly begin. Katrina's story started with sparks, not the kind that fly from romance, but the kind that hiss from metal grinding against metal. She stood alone in the corner of a makeshift welding yard, masked in soot and sweat. Her body moved with mechanical certainty, gloves tight, stance steady, sparks flashing around her like fireflies caught in a storm. Her welding torch sizzled as she dragged it across steel. To outsiders, it was just noise, but to Katrina it was the sound of survival. She was 25, too young to carry the kind of weight she bore, too old to dream about rescue. 6 years ago, she buried her mother with her bare hands, the same hands that now held a welder's torch. Her father, long gone, her younger brother Timmy, lay on a thin mattress in their one-room home just 2 streets away, chest rising and falling under the spell of chronic illness. He was the only reason she hadn't collapsed yet. Or run. Every day was the same. Weld, eat little, earn less, return to Timmy, repeat. And yet, in the midst of all this, she was feared, not because she was dangerous, but because she was different. Men scoffed at her presence on the worksite. A woman welding? Abomination. She should be sewing, not soldering. But none of them could outwork her, or outlast her. They tried, failed, left. Katrina remained, quiet, enduring, untouchable. She didn't seek praise. She didn't explain herself. She didn't have time for dignity, only discipline. And so, when the black Brabus Jeep rolled onto the street that Friday afternoon, its engine purring like a beast held back by velvet ropes, she didn't even glance up, but everyone else did. Shopkeepers froze mid-transaction. Children paused mid-run. Even the idle apprentices dropped their tools. The Jeep wasn't just transportation, it was a signal. Whoever sat inside didn't belong to this world of rust and grease. The car door clicked open with an elegance foreign to this street. A man stepped out. He wore black trousers that didn't wrinkle, a white shirt that hadn't seen sweat, and a face clean-shaven, calm, unreadable. He moved with quiet purpose, not arrogance, but command. He held a small iron gate hinge in one hand. "I need a welder," he said, his voice low but clear. The manager hesitated. "Sir, you sure you no want go VI for that?" The man gave a small smile. "I was told this is the best place." The manager chuckled and gestured toward Katrina's corner. "Nah here. She fit fix em. No story." The man raised an eyebrow. "Her?" But he walked. He approached as sparks flew, stopping just short of the arc of danger. He waited, patient, watching. For a moment the street seemed to hold its breath. Katrina lifted her mask slowly, annoyed, expecting a lecture or a joke. Instead, their eyes met. Brown met blue, tired met curious, soot met silk. "Cash only," she said, without ceremony. "Of course," he replied. She took the hinge without another word and turned away. He stood silently, watching as she examined it with precision. No flirtation, no hesitation, just work. Her hands were firm, movements sharp. She didn't ask what kind of car he drove. She didn't care how much his watch cost. She didn't even look up again, not once. In 10 minutes, she returned it. Repaired. Done. He reached for his wallet, pulling out twice the expected amount. She glanced at the money. "I charge for the job, not your shoes." He looked surprised, but only for a second. Then he smiled. "I'll remember that." And he walked back to his car. No names exchanged, no compliments paid, just metal, sparks, and silence. The Jeep pulled away. The street buzzed again, but Katrina went back to work, as if nothing had happened. What she didn't know, what no one could know, was that the man in the Brabus wasn't just a customer. He wasn't just rich. He was Stuart Lawson, tech mogul turned philanthropist, worth billions, adored by media, and completely, utterly alone. And in a city that bowed to him, the only woman who didn't even look at twice was the one who now haunted his mind. The next day, Katrina barely noticed the buzz around the workshop. She arrived, as she always did, early, quiet, focused, her toolbox in one hand, water bottle in the other. The sun was already punishing. The air tasted like iron dust. As she pulled on her gloves, someone whispered behind her. He came back. She paused for a second, then shrugged. Men with money often returned, to gawk, to play, to act impressed by the girl who could wield fire. It was never about the work. It was about novelty, about control. She'd seen it before. She didn't even look up. Across the road, inside the cooled interior of the Brabus Jeep, Stuart Lawson sat silently, watching her. She hadn't left his thoughts since yesterday. There was something about her movements, the confidence, the absence of need in her expression, the precision in her hands. She didn't just work. She ruled her small kingdom of steel like a queen who never asked to be crowned. Stuart had seen elegance on red carpets, in boardrooms, at international conferences. But it was never raw. It was never real. Katrina was real. He didn't know what he was doing back here. He wasn't a man who followed anyone. But something in her refusal to notice him had scratched a part of his soul he didn't know still existed. She didn't treat him like a man with money. She treated him like noise. And somehow, he didn't mind. For 3 days, he returned, always with something broken. A door handle, a car latch, a loose screw from one of his properties. Silly excuses, but Katrina never questioned them. She fixed the object, took her payment, gave no thanks, no smiles, no interest. But on the 4th day, something shifted. Katrina's welding torch sputtered and died mid-job. Her usual supplier hadn't delivered the gas. She pulled her gloves off and stood still for a moment, her jaw clenched, shoulders tight. It was the first time Stuart saw her flinch. He stepped out of the Jeep. Problem? She glanced at him, still distant, but not hostile. No gas. I'll manage. He gestured toward the trunk of his Jeep. I have a small backup tank in my estate. Use it. I'll send someone. She wiped sweat from her brow. I don't take favors. It's not a favor, he said calmly. It's a tool, same as yours. Just sitting there, wasting time. He didn't smile, didn't insist, just left the words in the air like a bridge she could walk over or ignore. She hesitated, then nodded once. That day, for the first time, she said, "Thank you." It was barely above a whisper. It echoed like thunder in Stuart's chest. From that point on, he stopped bringing broken items. He just showed up. Sometimes he stood across the street, watching. Sometimes he sat under a nearby shed, pretending to check his phone. He didn't speak unless she did. He didn't ask questions. He just stayed. The city moved around them, loud, gritty, chaotic. But their silence became a world of its own. People began to notice. "No boyfriend?" one of the welders joked. Katrina shot him a glance so sharp he went silent for the rest of the shift. But inside, she wasn't as steady as she seemed. Why was he still coming? He hadn't touched her, hadn't flirted, hadn't shown any signs of the games she'd seen men play. She didn't know whether to feel seen or exposed. She caught herself looking for his Jeep every morning, not expecting, but wondering. One afternoon, as clouds began to gather and Lagos braced for one of its sudden downpours, Katrina was still working, trying to finish a job before the rain hit. The thunder rumbled. She didn't stop. Stuart appeared beside her, holding an umbrella. "You'll get drenched," he said softly. She didn't answer. The first drop fell, then another. She kept working. He didn't try again. Instead, he stood there, holding the umbrella over her, not himself. Minutes passed. Rain poured. The job was done. Katrina removed her helmet slowly and looked at him. For the first time, her eyes softened, just slightly. "You'll ruin your shoes," he smiled. They needed humbling. She turned away, but not before he caught the corner of her mouth rise for a fleeting second. He didn't follow. He didn't gloat. He just walked back to his car, soaked, silent, content. That night, Katrina sat beside Timmy, watching the fan rotate slowly above their heads. "Why do you think someone would just stay?" she asked. Timmy blinked sleepily. "Maybe they like how you fix things." She smiled, brushing his forehead. "Maybe." But deep inside, something unfamiliar stirred. A softness, a question, a beginning. They say the closer someone gets to your heart, the more dangerous they become. For Katrina, danger never wore suits or drove jeeps. It wore promises. And Stuart was starting to feel like a promise. He was still coming. Every day, no longer pretending to need tools fixed, no longer speaking much. He'd bring her gloves, juice, books for Timmy, an umbrella folded neatly by her bench. He'd sit under the shed, watching her work like someone watches fire, fascinated, careful not to touch. And she, against her own will, began to look for him. Some days she found herself finishing her work faster, wondering if he'd notice. On others, she'd feel annoyed by her own awareness at the way his voice lingered in her ears long after he left. But she never said it, not to Timmy, not to herself, because the last time she believed in a man's softness, it ended with shattered bones and an empty house. She was 19. Her mother was dying. A neighbor with kind eyes and a sugar tongue offered help. Groceries, transportation. Then one night, something else. Something violent. No one believed her. She learned to weld 2 weeks later. Fire, she thought, was easier to control than people. So when Stuart asked one quiet Wednesday, "Can I take you and Timmy out this weekend?" she stared at him. "Why?" He blinked. "Because you've been feeding me sparks and smoke. I'd like to return the favor. A real meal. No welding, no fumes, just air." "Rich men don't ask. They buy," she said flatly. Stuart didn't flinch. "Maybe I'm not like most rich men." Katrina looked away. "That's what they all say, before they turn into exactly that." The silence between them thickened, heavy, raw. Stuart placed the food basket he brought that day, bread, fish rolls, mango juice, on her table and walked away. He didn't return the next day or the day after. Katrina told herself she was relieved, that things were going back to normal, that she didn't need him anyway, but work felt quieter. Timmy asked less about Uncle Jeep. By the fourth day, she caught herself pausing during a break, looking at the street corner where the Brabus used to park. He wasn't there. That night, as rain pattered softly on the roof, Timmy coughed more than usual. Katrina sat beside him, rubbing his back gently, mind spinning. Was she pushing away the only good thing that ever came close? Was that what safety looked like now? Distance. The next morning, she arrived at the workshop early, too early, no Jeep. She picked up a torch, started a new project, pushed herself through the day. Her hands ached, her shoulders screamed, but it wasn't exhaustion. It was frustration. At him, at herself, at this feeling. Why did he care? Why did she care that he cared? By late afternoon, as she packed her tools, she saw the Brabus parked across the street, windows fogged from the AC. He stepped out slowly, holding nothing, wearing no smile, just presence. She didn't speak. Neither did he. Not at first. Then finally, quietly, "I'm not trying to save you, Katrina. I'm just trying to stay." She swallowed. Her voice cracked for the first time in years. "That's not how it works here." He took a step closer, careful, respectful. "Then teach me how it works. I'll learn." I swear she looked away. At the floor, at the rusted tools, at the sun disappearing behind the tin roof. "If you want to stay," she said softly, "you'll have to stay without touching anything. No promises, no offers, no trying to fix me." Stuart nodded. "I can do that. But," she added, "you'll still leave." There was no bitterness in her voice, just truth. He paused. "Maybe, but not today." And then he turned, walked away. She watched him go, and in that moment, something inside her, something long buried, shifted. She wasn't sure what it was, but it wasn't fear. It was the beginning of surrender. Not to him, to the possibility that not everyone wanted something from her. Some just wanted to stand beside her quietly until she was ready to believe something had shifted. Katrina could feel it, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet, the spaces between things, in the way she didn't flinch anymore when Stuart appeared at the edge of her vision, in the way her heart no longer armored itself. The moment she heard the soft purr of the Brabus jeep outside the Welding yard, he had kept his word. He showed up. He brought nothing, asked nothing, touched nothing. He simply stood, watching, breathing, waiting. Some men chase with words, others with charm. Stuart was chasing her with patience. And somehow, that was more terrifying than desire. One afternoon, as the Lagos sun clung fiercely to the sky, Katrina was wrapping up early. She hadn't noticed the time. She hadn't noticed Stuart was already there, leaning against a rusted pole, arms folded, quiet as ever. She didn't say hello. He didn't expect her to, but something pulled her eyes toward him. Just for a second. That second turned into two. Two became five. And then, for the first time in weeks, she walked toward him, not fast, not eager, just steady. She stopped a few feet away. "Why?" she asked, his brow furrowed. "Why what? Why this? Why me? There are women with softer voices and cleaner hands." He didn't blink. "Because you don't look at me like I owe you anything, and because your silence speaks louder than most people's applause." She almost smiled. Almost. "But what if I never look back?" she asked. "Then I'll still know I stood somewhere honest," he replied. That answer, plain, unpolished, landed deep. She didn't respond. Instead, she reached into her pocket, pulled out a folded cloth, one of the welding gloves he'd brought weeks ago, and handed it to him. He opened it. Inside was a single mango, sliced and wrapped neatly, still cold. "You left this on my bench last Friday," she said. Stuart's eyes widened slightly. "I thought you ignored it." She shrugged. "I don't waste things," she said. He looked down, then up, and in her eyes, for the first time, he saw it. Not invitation, not affection, but permission. That evening, Katrina walked home slower than usual. The air was thick, but her chest felt lighter. When she entered the house, Timmy looked up from the floor where he was sketching. "You smiled." She froze. "I saw it," he said. "Right there, when you opened the door." Katrina sat beside him and ran her fingers through his soft hair. "You hungry?" "Always." As she got up to prepare dinner, Timmy tilted his head. "Is he still coming?" "Who?" "The man with the car that looks like a spaceship." She laughed softly, a rare, clear sound. "Yes." "Do you like him?" Katrina didn't answer. But that night, she didn't weld. She didn't work. She sat on the wooden stool beside Timmy's bed and stared at the mango skin on the table. It was nothing, and it was everything. The next day, Stuart arrived with something different. He didn't bring food or gifts. He brought a book. "It's about a man who learns to fix clocks," he said. Not for money, just because he loved understanding how things tick. Katrina raised an eyebrow. "Is that supposed to be a metaphor?" "No," he smiled, "but I wouldn't stop you from thinking it is." She took the book. No words of thanks, just a nod. But something invisible passed between them. It was no longer the silence of strangers. It was the silence of people building something. The following weekend, a light rain kissed the city. Not heavy, not violent, just soft enough to make the streets gleam. Katrina was off that day. She sat outside her home, a rare moment of rest, with Timmy asleep beside her. That's when she saw it. The Brabus jeep rolling slowly down the street. She didn't move. He parked, got out, carried nothing, walked toward her. No crowd, no audience, just two people, one soft Sunday. Stuart didn't speak. Katrina patted the space beside her on the concrete slab. He sat, still no words, The rain danced on rooftops, and for the first time, she turned toward him, fully. Her eyes weren't guarded anymore. They weren't glowing either. They were calm. "You don't give up easy," she said. "I'm learning welding from the best," he replied. That time, she did smile. And when she looked back at the house, where her sick brother slept, where memories of pain still lingered, she realized she hadn't thought about her past in hours. She had been here, now, with him. And maybe, just maybe, tomorrow didn't feel so impossible. Weeks passed. The world didn't stop for their story, but it slowed down just enough for them to find rhythm. Katrina kept welding. She still wore the same dusty boots, still tied her scarf tight around her head, still returned home to Timmy every evening with tired hands and quiet eyes. But something in her had shifted. She wasn't surviving anymore. She was living. And Stuart? He didn't try to fix that. He simply blended into the routine. His expensive shoes found dust. His silk shirts wrinkled in the sun. The billionaire who once lived in boardrooms now sat beside a welding station with grease on his palm and peace in his chest. He never asked her to leave the workshop, never suggested she deserved better. He knew this was her better, because it was real. One Sunday evening, the city buzzed with football cheers and smoky air. Katrina had just finished braiding Timmy's hair when he asked, "Can we invite him for dinner?" She raised an eyebrow. "Stuart?" Timmy nodded. "He waits outside every day. That's not fair. He's like part of us now." Katrina hesitated. Cooking for someone was no small gesture. It wasn't romance. It was intimacy. But Timmy was right. He had stayed. She got up, brushed flour from her palms, and whispered, "Okay, go change." When Stuart arrived that evening, as usual, parked across the street, he was surprised to see Timmy standing by the gate. "You're invited," the boy said. Stuart blinked. "To what?" "Rice, with real pepper," Timmy grinned. Inside, the house was humble. Clean but small, a single fan spinning above, a mat on the floor, plates stacked neatly on a stool, no dining table, no cutlery set, just 3 people and a meal. Stuart sat cross-legged beside Timmy, who began bombarding him with questions. "What's the most expensive thing you ever bought? What does caviar taste like? Did you ever meet a president?" Katrina watched, quiet but amused, as the billionaire stumbled through answers while burning his tongue on spicy stew. At one point, Timmy whispered loudly, "You know, if you buy me 10 shoes, I'll let you marry my sister." Katrina choked on her water. Stuart froze, then laughed so hard the mat shook. Katrina tried to scold Timmy, but her smile betrayed her. For the first time in a long time, joy filled the room. Not survival, not noise, just joy. After dinner, Stuart helped clear the plates. Katrina leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed, watching. "You're a terrible guest," she said. "Oh? Guests don't wash dishes." He looked over his shoulder. "Maybe I don't want to be a guest." Silence, but the kind that didn't need fixing. That night, as Stuart left, Timmy handed him a paper drawing, a sketch of the 3 of them holding hands under a mango tree. Stuart looked at Katrina. She looked away. But the blush on her cheek said everything. One morning, a large construction company visited the welding yard, offering Katrina a commission job for structural welding on a housing project. It would double her income, give her flexibility to work from home, more time with Timmy. Everyone assumed Stuart pulled strings. He hadn't. He didn't even know until she told him, proudly, while they sat under their now regular tree spot. "You're building homes now," he smiled. "I'm welding bones," she replied. "Broken homes need strong bones." He nodded, then softly asked, "And what about your own home?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached for his hand, slow, unsure, but firm, for a woman who once feared touch more than poverty. It was a revolution. She leaned her head on his shoulder. No kiss, no promises, just presence. And sparks, not from fire, but from love, the kind that isn't loud, the kind that shows up every day, waits, listens, believes. Some loves aren't found in ballrooms or apps. Some are welded, one spark at a time,